Hi, welcome to Changemakers, a smarter school podcast exploring how to live a successful and happy life. I am Katlego, your host. On every episode, I talk to great thinkers and doers from different walks of life who are at the forefront of positively impacting society. Our conversations focus on their specific journeys to achieving their goals. We talk mindsets, books, advice, and tools they use to keep them motivated. All the key ingredients you need for a happy and fulfilling life. I hope you enjoy this next episode. In the applied mathematics faculty instead of engineering or the health sciences for medicine, etc. How did your interest in mathematics start? Actually, can you remember anything in particular, or do you have any unique experience that made you go towards maths than any other subject? Especially when you said you wanted to be a doctor before.
Yeah, so I think my maths experience is actually an interesting one. So remember, I said that I've spent like my childhood in the Eastern Cape. So the place is rural, so I was unable to construct anything in English. So when I went to Witbank, I was being laughed at for not being able to speak properly, for not being able to, grasp like the basics. So math was the only thing that I could sort of like find solace in doing because that's what I could basically understand. So at the time, I had to transition from doing isiXhosa to doing isiZulu, which was also a big shift. And, I was also getting a lot of things wrong, putting Xhosa words in isiZulu, and my teachers, would call me out. My English was not proper. I was unable to, say half the things that like half the kids in my class could do. So that really meant that I had to really pull up my socks. But I never really found that struggle with maths, and that has just been improving over time. And at some point, it was kind of like effortless. By the time I get to high school, it was something that was much easier to do for me than anything else, which, I knew that wherever I go, if things really, really get tough, I'm being asked all these fancy things in English. But as soon as you bring me like a math question paper here,
So for
I'll be
X.
able to just smile.
Yeah. On this episode, I speak to Simon Baba Bekezulu, a data scientist who is passionate about building scalable models and applying machine learning techniques to improve business functions. What did I just say? Exactly. To many of us, myself included, this is a foreign subject. But why? It shouldn't be. Join me now in conversation with Simon on what artificial intelligence is and how it's applied in our daily lives. On the first part of our conversation, Simon takes us through his journey from childhood as a cattle herder in rural Eastern Cape to finding his passion in numbers after being unable to communicate confidently in English with his peers and teachers at school, and how he is using his love for mathematics in the artificial intelligence space to make moolah, and as you will hear, to live a softer life. The guy can't walk barefoot anymore. Please enjoy. Hi Simon, how are you?
I'm very good, KG. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for joining us on this Changemakers podcast today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the
Sure.
platform.
I see that there's a bit of a delay in terms of our connectivity, which might be a problem as we go, but we'll handle it and sort it out. So as a start, the first question is, obviously, who's Simon Bekezulu? Where were you born? What's your academic background, and how did you get to where you are today? And just briefly also explain what you currently do to our audience. So can you maybe just try to summarize that in like 2 minutes or so?
Cool. Thank you, KG. So yeah, as you have mentioned, so my name is Simon Bekezulu. So I was actually born in Mpumalanga. But when I was very young, I was taken to Eastern Cape. That's where I spent most of my childhood. So that's about from the ages of about 2 to 13 years. So I was staying there. I was a goat header. So I was basically looking after the home's livestock and all that stuff. So I used to be the guy that would go to the bush to fetch the cows and run after everything, go barefoot and all that. So I used to be tough when I was young. And then when I was about 13, I went to Wheatbank. That's when I actually started my primary. And until I actually completed my matric. So I've spent a bit of my teenage years that side. And then for my varsity, I went to Johannesburg. I studied at VETS. So that was about from 2008. That's when I did my first year. I graduated in 2010. 2011, I did my postgrad, and in 2012, I started working my first job. 2013, I actually went back to school again to do the computer science and applied maths honors. And in 2014, that's when I started working. So I was part of the graduate program at Standard Bank, and that's how the journey began, basically.
Yeah. So, so you're saying now you're living soft because you were saying when you were younger you used to go barefoot. You were strong then. So it sounds like these days you're not as strong. Used to the soft life, post varsity.
So I think, yeah, that's actually
Anyway,
quite interesting. So
yeah.
I'll be just brief on that. So I do go to Eastern Cape. So that is still a place I call home. But I've just realized that almost like 90% of the things I used to do then, including the distances I used to walk then, I'm unable to do right now. The places I used to go to, the mountains I used to climb. So that's why I'm saying, yeah, I used to be tough then, but not now. So right now I can't walk barefoot in the yard. That time I used to walk barefoot in some rocky places, some very uncomfortable territories to be in.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I want you to give us a bit more in terms of, your, maybe let's start with your varsity. What exactly did you study? How did you get interested in that subject? And you said you went to work and came back. What made you come back and decide to do computer science, after a few, I think it was a year or two of work. So just
Sure.
take us
That's
briefly
actually,
through those years.
yeah, sure. That's actually an interesting question. So, ironically, if the last time you met me was in high school, you would have thought that this guy would be a doctor by now because that's what I wanted to do. But things changed when my technical drawing teacher basically approached me, and he was impressed with my progress on like how I solve problems, how I can do like the assembly of like those drawings, like they give you like these bits and pieces and then you put them together and you create this nice view. So, and then he sort of tried to implicitly persuade me to do engineering. And I was not quite as convinced, but what then eventually happened is that he got me sort of like a scholarship in a company called the Samanka. So those guys came and then they sponsored us for everything that we would need in like the metric. So I think it was the two of us from our high school. So from stationery to uniform to basically applications to university to access to mentorship and all that stuff. And that really fast tracked the whole journey of me wanting to further my studies. So that's how then the sort of shift from like a medicine into like the technical fields like engineering. So when I went to varsity in my first year, I didn't really know what was being offered, how to go about it. So I was basically working alone. I had to make these decisions on my own. I didn't have anyone else that I could consult. And I went to a professor of the School of Applied Math. And I basically explained my situation, and he was friendly enough to be able to, relate. I'm sure obviously he had been exposed to situations like my situation where someone comes in and has completely zero understanding of, what the university is about, what's being offered, what's the difference between a degree and a diploma. I didn't know that. And so all I knew was that I was interested in maths and I wanted to do maths for as long as possible. And he basically advised me to do BSc. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's why. So you decided on maths before you applied to Wits, and that's why you decided to talk to someone in the applied mathematics faculty instead of engineering or the health sciences for medicine, etc. How did your interest in mathematics start? Actually, can you remember anything in particular, or do you have any unique experience that made you go towards maths than any other subject, especially when you said you wanted to be a doctor before?
Yeah, so I think my maths experience is actually an interesting one. So remember I said that I've spent like my childhood in the Eastern Cape. So the place is rural, so I was unable to construct anything in English. So when I went to Witbank, I was being laughed at for not being able to speak properly, for not being able to, grasp like the basics. So math was the only thing that I could sort of like find solace in doing, because that's what I could basically understand. So at the time, I had to transition from doing isiXhosa to doing isiZulu, which was also a big shift. And, I was also getting a lot of things wrong, putting Xhosa words in isiZulu, and my teachers, would call me out. My English was not proper. I was unable to, say half the things that like half the kids in my class could do. So that really meant that I had to really pull up my socks. But I never really found that struggle with maths, and that has just been, improving over time. And at some point, it was kind of like effortless. By the time I get to high school, it was something that was much easier to do for me than anything else, which, I knew that wherever I go, if things really, really get tough, I'm being asked all these fancy things in English, but as soon as you bring me like a math question paper here,
for X,
that is to smile.
Yeah.
So that's how I actually became comfortable around, being able to do math. So even with engineering, I knew that there was math, but there were like a whole lot of other things that I didn't know if I, I was going to enjoy, I was going to be able to basically relate with as I do with math.
Sure. Yeah, man, that's powerful that you found solace in a subject, and look, today it has shaped you and made your career, and you sound very eloquent, I must say. So I think that's your story. A lot of South Africans, including myself, Black South Africans will relate to. Because I remember actually speaking English used to be tough. We used to learn English in our own languages, so speaking English like this was quite foreign until at least, first year or second year of varsity. I feel that. I definitely feel that. So I want to digress a bit, and look at now post university. You went back and did computer science. So I want to understand why after, that part, why after you had worked a bit, you had done your applied mathematics, that's what I'm understanding, went to work a bit, came back and did computational science. I want to know why that transition and what caused that, and then just also explain a bit, artificial science and what you're currently doing today.
Yeah, sure. So that's actually an interesting question. So maybe let me just take you back to my later years in my varsity. So I started, having these questions around, okay, so now I understand math, but how can I use this thing? Where would I work, So when you go into like that curriculum, there's like this breakdown of what you need to get into the field. Once you've got this degree, where can you apply this degree? So I've like read up on like all those things, and, it was just endless, opportunities that you get exposed to once you've gotten this thing, but provided obviously you can relate to the field. So that then prompted me to really think critically about where do I want to sort of like apply my skills and my knowledge that I've acquired. And that's where the love for computer science and the love for algorithms, for programming started coming in. But I was a math student at the time, which is where then I had to bridge that gap to say, so what can I do to effectively get there? But at the same time, I was developing this interest for business, understanding like accounting, understanding like the economics, and how the different factors of the economy, from micro to macroeconomics affect basically, like the running of the company. What does running of the company do? Understanding, like what people mean when they talk about like the market share, the market cap, like the shares, like the stock exchanges and like all that stuff. So, I then got exposed to, like people who would come on campus. I think, like in our third year. So that's where now you could really understand what roughly is happening out there. And one of my first love was something called algorithmic trading. So I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically there what you do
I've
is
heard
that
algorithms. I'm still struggling to understand algorithms. What is this? So yeah, please do explain.
Yeah, sure. So the algorithmic trading is basically you trying to write a code that can automate what would normally be manually done by traders in like the trading floors. Be it like interpreting the equity and buying of shares and like currencies and like all that stuff, but like in an automated system. And how you improve those decisions over time and how you scale that, and basically how you do like that fast execution. So as a single person, obviously, like doing that thing where you analyze the company, you can only, be limited to so much. But if you've got a system that has got this logic of what to look for, what are the red flags, what are the green flags, and, like for me to do the execution, what I need.
Yeah, let's track back a bit. I want to understand this you see, can't even pronounce the word now. This algorithmic trading, right? Is in simple terms, is this you, when you're saying writing a code, is this like a formula that then is used by like a computer software to analyze trades, so buying and selling of a certain stock, or certain, let me call it stock of a company, and then that system makes a decision for you whether you should buy or sell something. Am I understanding you properly?
Exactly. So in a nutshell, it's all the decisions that generally a trader would go through. So a trader would have like the team that's doing the research come with information to say, we think you should buy this company. Then he will also have his own input, right? And then goes and like buy the company. So what the system is doing is that now it's kind of like doing all that without like a human intervention in the process. So when you can achieve that with the system, is that now you are not limited to trading X amount of trades a day. You can scale that across like domains and fields that like a sort of like human is limited to, in a sense.
Yeah. So you got interested in this algorithmic trading while you were working at is it Massmart or Standard Bank, and then went back to do your postgrad in computational science, and then what happens next?
Yeah, and then so at Massmart, I was actually a business intelligence graduate there. So that exposed me to how you do the competitor analysis, how you analyze the financial statements and all that stuff. What do you extract from like the balance sheet and all that, and what is equity, what is return on investment. So that exposed me to that. And it was actually good that I had that information going back, because at some later point, so it actually comes up. So post that, and after doing my postgrad, I then went on to work at Standard Bank. So I was fortunate enough that I was part of the program where we were being rotated, to different divisions to understand how they work. And you would also get your hands dirty, get the information from the team, have your KPIs. Obviously, that meant you also had to, meet certain targets. So that was good in terms of giving you exposure to the overall running and operations of the company, because, that meant you could go from understanding a couple of businesses in retail to a couple of businesses in the business side of the bank. So which is where I got exposed to this trading, how they basically go about with that, and data, on the data warehouse, which is, once that was done, then the whole task was you would have to come up with some sort of motivation as to where do you feel that you best fit in, and then they would try and make an effort to sort of place you there, which I think was a very sort of easy way into the corporate. Because if you just get in there, it could be very, very overwhelming, because there's just so much gap between what theoretically from university school level to what you would have to do when you go to the corporate, because you realize there's a lot of stakeholder management, which you don't know. It's good, it's just you, your books, get good marks, that's all. So you go to corporate, it's not just about you being able to execute very well on your given mandate, but it's also being able to maintain the relationships, be able to get information that you want from people, understand that there's a lot of work that you don't know, that you would have to rely on people to be able to produce, and so there's just so many nuanced details that you have to navigate.
No, I'm not plugging Standard Bank, but it sounds like an awesome program, that was had a mentoring aspect to it, to make sure that you as a new graduate are exposed to different parts of the business, and you get to have some feel of where you think you would have impact, and also feel that you would be adding some value. So I think I'm glad that they did that. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Simon for sharing his inspiring story. So far, he's proven that your beginning does not have to determine your end. I learned that finding enjoyment in what you do is what keeps one inquisitive and open to learning more, thus creating opportunities to tap into. Notwithstanding the well-designed professional development programs that Simon was part of post his student career, and the support that he received from his teachers and mentors, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Note that our conversation is not done. I spoke to Simon and we delved deeper into artificial intelligence. We spoke about how it's being currently used, and spoke about the threats that it poses to our society, and whether we should embrace it or not, and what would be the potential solutions to the problems that we are facing today using artificial intelligence. See you on the other side, part 2 of this conversation. Let's go. This has been a Smarty School production. Catch you on the next episode. Stay smart and keep well. If you enjoyed this episode of Changemakers, please subscribe if you have not already. Help us spread the word by rating and commenting on the podcast. We like hearing from you, as this will help us create better content and reach more people. Share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues whom you think will benefit or like this sort of content. If you have questions for me or my guest, or topics that you would like us to discuss next time, email me at podcasts@smartyschool.co.za.